Season's greetings to one and all, and welcome to a special edition of the Punter as we take a look forward to all of the Boxing Day games in the Premier League. Plenty to look forward to on what is a key period in the top flight in England. I'm pleased to say that Gordon Watson is joining me in the studio to take a look forward to all of the games on Boxing Day. It's a busy period for professional footballers, busy period for punters as well. Sometimes it can be difficult, can't it, to pinpoint the best bets because simply the games come up thick and fast.
Yep, squads are put under so much stress over this time of year. You get a couple of suspensions, you get a couple of injuries. You want to have a little look in advance, but you don't know who's going to play. And certain teams do better with certain personnel, as we saw only last week.
How did you fare over the Christmas period? Because we hear so often now managers talking about the stress and strains. Little injuries become bigger injuries if players play too often. Was it any different in your day? Was there still plenty of stress on the players?
Yeah, again, Christmas Day was a non-entity for us. I mean, our Christmas was probably in June when we had some time off because we were train Christmas morning, spaghetti bolognese for lunch, maybe see the kids for an hour or two in the afternoon, then we'd be in a hotel on Christmas Day and then get ready for the Boxing Day games. I always found that when we had a home game Boxing Day we did really well. Very, very seldom did very well away from home on Boxing Day. Interesting,
maybe something that punters should take a look at. Certainly the calendar is interesting, the fixture list, if teams have got to travel up and down the country, which generally they don't over the festive period. We're going to kick off our previews with a match at Goodison Park. Everton take on Wigan. Everton are keeping up the gallop at the minute. We have to say that because that was an impressive win, I felt, at West Ham. Yes, there was controversial incidents in the game, but I think overall they deserved to beat West Ham at Upton Park.
Without a doubt, I think they had 62% on the possession stats, and they had a goal disallowed. Yes, both sides had were down to 10 men, but for me, I think Everton, no Fellaini, that's a massive blow to them. And yet they went to West Ham and won. So for me, against Wigan, who they're doing okay, but they're just not finishing off their chances, you can only see Everton winning.
Let's take a look at the match odds, shall we, for this particular fixture. Everton are the favourites, 8 to 15. The draw 17 to 5. Wigan at 6 to 1. Difficult to see Wigan claiming the victory, even though they are fairly fancy priced available. They did okay against Arsenal. They put Arsenal under pressure, of course, in their previous fixture. But again, lack of goals, lack of cutting edge maybe up front has undone them.
Yeah, and when you look at this, you say Wigan are 6 to 1, and you think Everton, I don't think they've had a clean sheet in 12 or 13 games, even though they were unbeaten, they've only been beaten twice all year. Wigan, they're just so wasteful, and you can't be wasteful against Everton. And as I said earlier, the home sides will always have that little bit of an advantage. And it might even up, or it might just pull them clear of their opponents.
Sure to be a decent crowd as well at Boxing Day. 8 to 15 isn't everyone's cup of tea, and when we do get short prices, plenty look at the half-time, full-time odds for this, and maybe there is some value here if you do like the look of Everton. Well, 13 to 10, it's odds against. Do you think that Everton will be slow starting as they were against West Ham, or should we pile in at home double result?
Yeah, but Everton were only slow starting as far as goals were concerned, because they had obviously a goal disallowed first half. They took the game to West Ham right from the outset, and if they get obviously off to a good start against Wigan, I can't see Wigan coming back. So 13 to 10, you're probably better off taking that than the 8 to 15.
Yeah, it's interesting as well that Wigan were perhaps slow off the mark as well against Arsenal. Arsenal took the lead before Wigan came back into it. First goal scorer, you mentioned the fact that Marouane Fellaini still out suspended. Everton have got some goal scorers in their lineup. We also look at Jelavic, I guess, a little bit like Fellaini as their main goal getter, but can we trust him to get the first, do you think?
I would say probably, yeah, because the biggest weak spot for me at Wigan is the centre-halves, and Jelavic is an out-and-out sniffer. He just loves to get in and around. Doesn't really come outside the posts, so the ball goes in there. They've got good delivery from the right and the left with Baines and Payne. So I would say that Jelavic is probably good value, but there's probably there's more value there with the likes of a Baines or a Payne.
I'm going to say Baines, who's on free kick duty, and Payne as well pops up with the odd goal, and I'm not quite sure if he's going to claim the goal at West Ham and actually won the game, because it seemed to ricochet around a little bit. But occasionally you can spy some value with Everton because they do tend to share the goals around.
Yeah, they've got players. I mean, you've got Naismith, who obviously comes in, Leon Osman, who had a goal disallowed, perfectly good goal in my view against West Ham. So they've got plenty movement, and they don't mind pulling the trigger in front of goal. If you're looking at Wigan maybe to get a goal, then you're only looking at maybe a Gomez or a Kone.
Yeah, Kone, who missed that chance against Arsenal, of course, and DeSanto doesn't score too often for Wigan, but we're going for an Everton win anyway at Goodison Park, and relatively comfortable, we reckon. Let's move on to the game featuring Fulham and Southampton. Fulham were thumped at Anfield last time out. They were beaten 4-0. Can they bounce back? We know that they're a much better side at home, Flash.
Even though they're up against my side, I've got to stay true to myself and say you don't oppose Fulham at the Cottage. You just never do it, especially on Boxing Day. Southampton, no Adam Lallana. Adam Lallana gives them a little bit of drive. They got beat against Sunderland last time out after having a 2-week break, which I thought would have been making them fresh. It didn't. It made them rusty. They didn't get themselves up to the pace of the Premiership that they took 16 games to acclimatise to. So for me, very tight game. But you've got to be with Fulham at the Cottage.
Let's take a look at the match prices, shall we, for this game at Craven Cottage between Fulham and Southampton. Fulham are 4-5, a shade odds on. That will be popular, you feel. The draw 14-5, Southampton 7-2. Saints just hovering outside of the relegation zone. I mean, they're short to long-term future here. If you're looking into your crystal ball over the next few months, do you think that they will be in a better position than they are now when it comes to staying in the top flight?
Yeah, I think they'll be. Obviously, I think they won't be outside bottom 6. They're always going to be there flirting with it, but I think because they do score goals on the whole, even though they're coming off a blank at home to Sunderland, that they, as long as they score goals, they will be fine. And they've had a lot of hard games early on in the season.
Speaking of goals, let's take a look at goal scorers and the main goal getters for both sides in terms of the odds available to score the first goal. You can see Berbatov 5-1, Petric 11-2, Rosenior 6-1. When it comes to Southampton, Lambert, Rodriguez and Puncher at 15-2, 9s and 12s. Which players would you put in the mix, Flash, for first goal scorer?
I like Rosenior. I think he does come up with goals, and he normally comes up with them in the second part of the season. Always did when he was at Wigan, and I feel as if his power and pace just might find Southampton out. Because if Southampton do have a weakness, it's definitely with the centre halves.
What about Berbatov so far this season for Fulham? Because occasionally he'll look absolutely fantastic, but then he'll drift out of games and he won't get a kick.
That's Berbatov, though. I mean, that's why he's so unpredictable and people love to go and watch him. You don't know which Berbatov's going to turn up. I mean, he's so languid. He looks as if he's not bothered. Then he comes to life and does a bit, you know. So for me, he's obviously the class act. And as long as they get players around him that maybe do a bit more work or they make runs off to give him space, then he's an outstanding player.
Let's take a look at the half-time, full-time market for this fixture in the capital. Obviously, Fulham are the favourites to win at both half-time and full-time. You can see they're 2-1. If you fancy draw Fulham 100-30, and again, this is one that the Bet Butler usually likes, isn't it? A team can be dominant, but they might have to wait until the second period to break through. Yeah,
and you can look maybe at Saints Fulham at 25-1 because Southampton don't normally do too bad at coming out the traps. So they might even get themselves ahead, or draw Fulham. I definitely see Fulham having too much in the end, because I just think that Southampton have to hit the ground running, otherwise they'll be behind the 8 ball.
Flash, thanks for now. Let's move on to Manchester United versus Newcastle, shall we? This is a key game at Old Trafford. It always is. Newcastle have got an awful record at Old Trafford. Occasionally they've eked out a draw, but really this one potentially one for the accumulators, one for those punters that like the roll-up on Boxing Day, maybe putting 6, 8, 7, 10 teams. Do you put United in or not?
Yeah, they win. For me, they win because Newcastle, lack of creativity. I think their squad's on the bare bones, to be fair. And I'm looking at it thinking, right, well, how are you going to stop so many options that Man United have got? Man United's squad is just so much quality, so much depth, whereas Newcastle, they're the opposite. Going away from it. And Newcastle's next 3 games are horrendous. I don't see them getting anything at Old Trafford.
Let's take a look at the overs and unders market for this fixture at Old Trafford. We always believe that there's going to be goals in this particular game. As you can see, over 3.5 is 11-10, under 3.5, 8-11. That might be the one that punters look at first of all. The over and under 2.5, which is the more traditional overs and unders market, 4-9, 7-4. Over 4-9 is fairly skinny. Do we think there's going to be even more than that? How do you see it, Flash?
I definitely see it could be over 3.5. I think that only brings in a 4-0 or a 3-1. And you say about Newcastle that Bar and Cisse not linking up together, even though I did see last weekend against Queen's Park Rangers, little glimpses that they were closer, little ones they can put around the corner. They can score individually. But I think that Man United's firepower is just too much.
What do you think has gone wrong with Cisse in particular this season? It's strange because it's either Bar who's scoring or it's Cisse who's scoring. Yeah. The two don't seem to share it around for any particular period of time, do they?
I saw for about a 15-minute gap or 15-minute part of the game against Queen's Park Rangers that they were closer together. And I'd always like my strikers, especially with these two, really close because they can feed off each other. They're quite intelligent. They've got good technical ability. When they can become wide apart, they're isolated and easy to mark. So for me, then you're looking at just a mistake or a bit of individual brilliance. That only gets you like maybe 2 or 3 goals a season. So for me, if they get closer, they could be a handful. But against Man United, their record there's shocking. They'll be on the back foot straight away. Man United won't. I don't think they'll take much beating. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Bar 12-1 and Cisse 14-1 to get the first goal in the game. I think tells its own tale. As for Manchester United, again, we've got to look to Van Persie and Wayne Rooney. I know that punters don't like taking too short prices about first play to score or indeed any time goal scorer, but really it's these two. These are the main 2 men for Sir Alex Ferguson this season.
Yeah, they are. But if you look at Newcastle and you think they're going to go there and try and survive, then they're going to defend right on near enough on the penalty spot of their own box. So then a midfielder coming onto the ball like a Cleverley, maybe even a Valencia or even an Evra from the other side. So for me, I think there's more value to be had outside Rooney and Van Nistelrooy and RVP, but only in this game.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we listed Cleverley there as well. And you always feel that Manchester United's midfielders might not contribute as they once did, obviously, when the likes of Ronaldo was there and 1 or 2 others that have weighed in with sort of 10, 12 goals. You feel that Carrick ain't going to score that many, and Cleverley's got to step up to the plate a little bit more, maybe.
Well, I mean, this is his first full season. I really like Cleverley. I mean, we had him at Leicester a few years ago on loan when he was coming through the ranks, and he's a very intelligent footballer. Yes, he has got a lot of pulse goals about him. He did score a few weeks ago when they trounced someone at Old Trafford. But all in all, he plays too many different positions. If he plays ahead of the diamond, in behind Rooney and RVP, then I'm sure he'll get goals. Yeah,
there is a suspicion as well that Kagawa may well be back for this game. He is back in training for Manchester United. Whether this game will come too soon, we will find out, of course, when they kick off in that Boxing Day fixture at Old Trafford. Much more to preview when it comes to the key Boxing Day games in the Premier League. We'll also be dipping into the lower leagues as well and taking a look at the outright markets when it comes to the Championship, League One and League Two in this special festive edition of The Punter. Don't go away. Welcome back to this festive edition of The Punter as we take a look forward to the Boxing Day fixtures in the Premier League. Pleased to say that Flash Gordon Watson is with me in the studio, taking a look forward to the key games over the Christmas period. Plenty for punters to get stuck into. The next game, Flash, that we're going to take a look at features Chelsea. They're away at Carrow Road against Norwich. Norwich have had some eye-catching results and performances at home so far this season. Beaten Arsenal, beaten Manchester United. Can they get the better of Chelsea?
I don't believe so. I think that these match up brilliantly in Chelsea's favour. I think Chelsea, they don't get the ball and they don't just lump it into the box, because that's where Norwich are so organised. They want to start deep. They want to go and attack the ball. You can't do that with Chelsea, because Chelsea play intricate little 5 yards, give and goes, and their passing and movement will be far too strong for Norwich. And I don't think the price will last too long either.
Let's take a look at the match odds for the game at Carrow Road, with Norwich 4-1. Draw 14-5, Chelsea at 4-5, and I think Flash is dead right. That 4-5 is going to be very popular, and it might be a little bit shorter come kick-off here. Have 1 or 2 pundits overestimated Norwich a little bit? They have been on a fantastic run, but they were beaten by West Brom last time out, and as you've mentioned to me, their fixture list has been pretty favourable.
It has, and this is all I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to take anything away from Chris Hughton or Norwich in what they've achieved, because they can only do what's put in front of them. But they had a 10-game span of not really playing any of the big boys away from home. They had all the cannon fodder. They were at Southampton, they've been at Reading, they've been Swansea. They scored 3 set pieces, which is individual responsibility on the Swansea's behalf, so they've handed it to them on a plate. So for me, I think that the next sort of 10 games, we'll see where they are.
It's interesting with teams like Norwich. I always feel there are peaks and troughs in the season, and yes, they had a fantastic run, but there's no way they were going to keep that on, because if they do keep that on, they win the league, and we know that they're not going to win the league.
And their squad's not strong enough. They've only probably got a squad of maybe 15, 16 players. I mean, just let's take last week against West Bromwich Albion. They scored a set piece again, which a keeper's chucked in. He's chucked it in. I mean, his time was a little bit out, and to be fair, it was his first game back, so you can let him have that. But apart from that, they did not trouble Ben Foster again. And West Brom went and won 2-1, and there was no Grant Holt. Just one player. Grant Holt not there. They look completely different. They look toothless.
Chelsea, of course, have got plenty of attacking talent. Do we expect goals, do we think, here? Because I'm not quite sure what to make of Chelsea, because when Rafa Benitez first came, we had those 0-0 draws, of course, but then since then, Chelsea have opened up a little bit, haven't they? And they've got so much attacking talent.
And that's it. And against someone like Norwich, it could easily be like I think Norwich got beat 5-0 earlier on in the season against Liverpool with the likes of Suarez running riot. I can see that happening again if they get themselves in front. I think they could have a really good day out.
Let's take a look at the over and under odds for the game. Carrow Road, as you can see, if you believe there's only going to be one goal in the game, 4's on. If you think there's going to be 2 or more, 3-1. Over and under 2.5, 4-6, 11-10 respectively. And over and under 3.5. Well, I think the odds will be a little bit more generous that you can see there. I think that, like we saw with the Leeds game against Chelsea, Chelsea can just open up here, and it would not be a surprise if, you know, Mata has an Oscar Organ on the score sheet here. They've shared the goals around. Torres has come good to a certain extent. I know he doesn't score the first goal that often, but he's the type of player that if you're an overs punter, he'll score in the 80th, 85th minute.
Keeps going in.
And suddenly it's over 3.5, even over 4.5 sometimes.
And he keeps going in, and it's so much beneficial when you think to yourself, will they shut up shop? They don't. They get a taste for it. It's almost like a little bit of a vampire. They get a taste of blood, they're on it straight away. And for me, if Chelsea get their noses in front, Norwich will then start overcommitting and they'll get picked off. And these boys love hitting you on the break. So for me, I see Chelsea over 2.5 at 4-6. I mean, that's nearly as good as having Chelsea at 4-5.
4-5 to win the game, 4-6 over 2.5 goals in the match at Carrow Road. Let's move on to take a look at the match featuring Queen's Park Rangers and West Brom. QPR are 5 points from safety as it stands at the moment. Everyone in the media, it would appear, wants Harry Redknapp to get QPR out of trouble. The fixtures recently, just before Harry came, in fairness, were good to QPR. They didn't pick up enough points against a West Brom side that got back to winning ways last time out. Are QPR going to have it more difficult, or do you think they should win this game?
I think Queen's Park Rangers will win this game. I think that they let themselves down a little bit at Newcastle. I think they showed them a little bit too much respect when Newcastle were there for the taking. For me, I look at Queen's Park Rangers and I think, right, here's an opportunity, start afresh, get Christmas out of the way. Here we go, because there's so many games to go, and I think they've got so many more home games, and we know what Loftus Road's like. If they get on a roll, they could easily march up the table, and they win this, they'll be like 3 or 4 points from safety. And so for me, I think the 11-8 about Queen's Park Rangers, this is a bit like Chelsea. I don't think it'll be there for too long.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about the home and away, because when you split them up, what's happened so far, Queen's Park Rangers have got 2 more home games to play. They've played 8 at home, 10 on their travel. So you're dead right. Let's take a look at the match odds for the fixture. QPR 11-8, as you mentioned, the draw 12-5, and West Brom at 11-5. West Brom got back on track, of course, with that win over Norwich last time out. One thing that I've noticed about Harry's side, though, and the matches that have featured QPR since he's got there, he's made them defensively sound, or tried to make them defensively sound. We're not seeing that many goals. We always think that Harry's side is going to be free-flowing, but I think he's realised that if he's going to edge away from that relegation zone, he's got to keep it tight at the back.
Yeah, you need a base, and the base has to be that we stay in games as long as possible. We'll have a spell in the game, and when we have that spell in the game, we've got to make it count. He has got players that will score goals. I mean, they're talking about Anelka coming in the transfer window. Then he'll have Cisse, and he'll have Tarabt, and he'll have Mackie. He knows he needs a little bit more quality in that final third, or maybe a little bit more creativity. He's got a big job on him, but I think the Queen's Park Rangers will beat West Brom.
Let's take a look at the overs and unders market for this one. I tend to look at unders potentially for this, as you can see. Under 2.5, 19-20. Or should I say 5-6, over 2.5, 19-20. So just a shade odds on if you want to play unders here. And then we've got over and under 3.5 as well, 23-10, and 30-100 if you believe under 3.5. I go unders here.
Yeah, I think that's a safe play. I think you're looking at maybe a Queen's Park Rangers 2-0 win. And I'd be more than happy with that. And it might even bring in the 1-1 draw as well. I think unders is quite a safe bet. It's
interesting when we look at the first goal scorer market as well, that Lukaku, of course, did play for West Brom. He started in the previous game. Usually we've seen him as a substitute. We've got him as an 8-1 shot here to get the first goal. I mean, do we see him getting a run of games now? He did score the winner after all against Norwich.
No, I don't. I think he's only 19.
He's going to be in and out, isn't he?
He has to be that way, and I think that's the best way to manage him as well, because you're not going to put too much stress on his body. I mean, I know he's a big, strong lad, but he's still going to be weaker than he looks, if you know what I mean. He plays too much, he might get a bit complacent, whereas you dip him in and out, he's still going to be hungry. And also, I think he's probably a better substitute to come on than maybe the likes of Shane Long.
Yeah, Shane Long, of course, who missed out at the weekend. If you're looking at Queen's Park Rangers scorers, we were listing the likes of Cisse and Tarab. There's been lots of talk that Harry's going to buy a striker. Nicholas Anelka is a name that's been mooted. If you had to pick someone from a Queen's Park Rangers point of view, who would it be? At
home, I think you've got to go with Tarab. He's really on the crest of the wave.
Found a bit of form, hasn't he?
He has, and he is a bit of a homer. He really is. I mean, he doesn't score many goals away from home, but you get him in front of that Loftus Road crowd, and they absolutely love him to bits. So for me, he'd probably be the one that you would rely on most.
Reading versus Swansea we can take a look at next. Nothing's really gone right for Brian McDermott's side since they got back into the top flight. He was absolutely furious with what went on at the Etihad Stadium in their narrow defeat to Manchester City. I mean, I feel for Reading to a certain extent because they defended so well. I've got to admit, I've not got too much of a problem with the goal that Gareth Barry scored. The penalty shout that Reading had, fair enough, but, you know, City created chances and, like champions, they got the job done just.
They did. The big thing for me is you take it out of Reading. They took the manager's orders to the letter and they executed it. Yes, they should have had a penalty. I'm happy with the Gareth Barry goal myself. I think the defenders got to be bigger, stronger. But for me, it tells me that their spirit's good. They do normally score goals. At home, they play 4-4-2 with wide men. I think this will be a real humdinger. And I think that Reading could get the better of this, but it could be like a 3-2, 4-3. It could be a mad old game. It's definitely not going to be a 1-0 or 0-0.
Are they a value play at current odds? Let's take a look at the match prices for the game. Reading 15-8, draw 12-5, Swansea at 6-4. I mean, as you say, you can make a case for all three results here. You can make a case for Reading. I know it sounds ridiculous given their recent run of results, but Swansea are susceptible to the odd bad performance. They are 6-4. Some will say, hang on, Swansea have beaten Arsenal at the Emirates. I should be lumping on at 6-4 here. And I won't really stop anyone having a punt on any of those three outcomes, but you edging towards a Swansea?
No, Reading.
Reading.
Yeah, I'm heading towards Reading. And because they're now going to turn the corner and know that they're bottom, so they've got to come out fighting.
This is a game that Brian McDermott say, look, we can win this one.
Exactly. And all the players will be turning up thinking, we can win this. In their own minds, they've just kept a clean sheet for 90 minutes against Man City away. So there should be no fears about going and play a Swansea side where Reading score maybe average of 2 goals a home game this year. They've been involved in a couple of free frees. I would say that Reading will play out and out wingers with pace and keep their fullbacks in and will get the balls into the box early. I expect Pogrebniak and Lafondra and maybe even an attacking midfielder that day as well.
Yeah, watch out for those wingers, possibly McAnuff left and maybe Kebby on the right-hand side. Let's take a look at the overs and unders market as it stands going into this game. You can see that the bookmakers are indeed predicting goals here because they make 8-11 over 2.5, under 2.5, 11-10. Let's face it, when we previewed the Man City Reading game, we thought there was going to be lots of goals.
Yeah, you're entitled to think that.
Yeah, you know, we got that wrong. What do we think here?
Oh, I think that if you're having a look at Reading and Swansea being over 8-11, and yet Norwich Chelsea was over at 4-6, then this is great value because Reading don't keep clean sheets. They just don't do it. And at home, they look to go and score goals. And if they score an average of 2, you're only looking for Swansea to score 1. And we know that they score on their road.
I think that the key thing, and you touched on it before, Reading are going to look to win this game. They weren't looking to beat Manchester City. Obviously, they were hoping to, but they're going to set up differently for this game against Swansea.
Yeah, and the mindset will be completely different. I think from the first minute, they'll throw caution to the wind because they know that they score goals at home. So, like the other night, like a couple of weeks ago, they played Arsenal. They were 4-0 down. They kept going. Yes, Arsenal took their foot off the gas. Yes, Arsenal was sloppy, but they still scored twice. So they've still got players that will keep going in there. Now, against Swansea, they'll be looking at it and thinking, even if we're 1-0 down, we've got another 80 minutes to get the 3 points. So for me, I think Reading are great value.
Let's take a look at the first goal scorer market, shall we? And obviously towards the top of the market, one of the players of the season, many people's player of the season so far, Michu 5-1. Not sure if Danny Graham's going to play 7-1. He could do, of course. Pablo Hernandez has been missing recently, also 10s. For Reading, Pogrebniak 7s. Lafondra 7-1. Roberts, who's had problems with injury recently, is also up towards the top of the market there at 8-1. I'm never quite sure about Pogrebniak. You look to his record at Zenit a few years ago, it was fantastic. He came to Fulham with a burst of goals and then he's been a little quiet. He is a poacher. I'd probably rather play Lafondra or maybe one of the wingers, as you were saying.
Yeah, I think the best combination is probably Roberts and another. Pogrebniak for me, you say he's a poacher, he does too much work outside the box and it has to be something special. It has to be right there in his line of fire. So for me, he's been very disappointed. He's not led the line well enough and when he's had his chances, he's not pulled the trigger.
Reading have failed to score in 4 of their last 7. Of course, they've lost their last 7. So if you take that into account, maybe no goal scorer could be the bet if you like a low-scoring draw here. But I think we're all in agreement in the studio, at least, that it will be high-scoring and fairly entertaining. Much more to come on our festive special of the Punter as we delve into more of the Boxing Day games in the Premier League. Don't go away. Hello and welcome back to this festive special of the Punter as we try and pick out the best bets for you on a Boxing Day programme in the Premier League. Next game that we can take a look at, an intriguing fixture as Sunderland take on Manchester City at the Stadium of Light. Martin O'Neill's side have stopped the rot to a certain extent and beat Southampton last time out. We've got a former Saint in the studio. Flash is with us, Gordon Watson. Flash, good result for Sunderland against Southampton. We felt that Southampton might struggle when we previewed the game, but still, Sunderland got the job done. There's less pressure on Martin O'Neill now, and there's no pressure on him here to beat Manchester City, is there?
No, the only one will be that it's over a Christmas period and Sunderland beat Man City in this fixture, 93rd minute winner last year, 1-0. I don't see that happening. The way, because Man City are going to be still playing catch-up with Manchester United. They cannot afford to drop any points, especially over the Christmas period. And we look at the squads. We know that if, for Sunderland, we need Fletcher to score for him to have any chance. With Man City, it can come from anywhere, as we saw with Gareth Barry in the 93rd minute against Reading. So for me, I think Man City will get the job done, but I don't think it will be like a 3 or 4-0. I think they'll just make sure that the 3 points are in the bag when they leave.
Let's take a look at what the odds makers believe will happen. As you can see, Manchester City are short price favourites, very short, 4-7 to get the better of Sunderland at 7-5. The draw at 12-5. Roberto Mancini's side only just scraped past Reading. They had the chances. They got a controversial winner against Reading last time out. We saw Tevez and Aguero partnered once again. They've won every single game in the Premier League when they've played together, but because that was just the other day, will Roberto Mancini mix it up a little bit? And if he does, is that to the detriment of backers of City?
I don't think so.
If he plays Balotelli, if he plays...
No, you can't play Balotelli. You can't... Yeah, you've got to play Dzeko and Aguero. Or... No, you've got to play Dzeko and Aguero because you can't play Tevez and that. I think Tevez will be coming on as an impact. But the good thing for Man City is Sunderland are not going to go and park the bus at home. They're going to come out and have a go. But they've got such a weak midfield compared to the likes of a Torre, Garcia, Barry, Milner. I expect to see Barry and Milner playing in this game because I expect it to be a strong, physical game where, as the time goes on, Man City just get more and more comfortable. If they get up early, anything can happen.
Half-time, full-time. Let's take a look at it. Speaking about getting up early, because many punters will look to back City in the double result here. It's a 6-4 shot. Punters don't like taking 4-7 or odds on when it comes to Manchester City. We'll look at that. I think Sunderland are good value to at least keep it level until half-time. Draw Manchester City is trading at 9-5. If you think that Sunderland 12-1, Sunderland draw 20-1, Sunderland Man City at 70-1. That's a complete turnaround, of course, if you believe that might happen. I mean, that's not beyond the realms of possibility, is it?
No, it isn't, but you've got to be looking, if you're thinking about Man City are going to win the game at 4-7, then you've got to go with Man City at 6-4 as your first initial lay. And then when you go into that, when you get involved at 6-4, if it is a draw at half-time, then Man City will probably be 6-4 to win the game anyway. So you can go back in and maybe save your stake.
As it stands, Sunderland 4 points from safety. Have they played well enough over the last few games to suggest to you, Flash, that they're good enough to stay up, or are they potentially relegation candidates? Very much relegation candidates because their squad's not big enough, they don't score enough goals, and I think they get through on team spirit and organisation alone. There's not enough boys that have come to the party. Sessegnon, bit part, Larson not seen him, missed Catamol massively. They're talking about having Saha maybe back on the bench, but it's about Fletcher. If Fletcher plays, they've got a chance of scoring a goal because that's what he is, a natural goal scorer. But I just think from 1 to 16 in their squad, it's not strong enough. Yeah, not strong enough to take on Manchester City and win anyway. I think City, even though they are odds on, may well get the job done up in the northeast. Let's move it on to Aston Villa against Tottenham. Tottenham held by Stoke last time out. Every time Andrea Villas-Boas gets a bit of momentum, a bit ahead of steam, and you think, well, now Spurs are going to kick on. They're going to consolidate their place in the top 4. They have a bit of a stumble. Stoke are tough to beat, but generally at the Britannia, not away from home. Should Spurs have done better against Stoke last time? Yeah, prior to the game when we all thought it was going to be Tottenham to beat Stoke, but the conditions on the day
played straight into Stoke's hands. It was blowing an absolute hooligan. It was raining. The rain coming down the pitch was really tough. So it works into the favour of big, strong players. And also, it's hard to pass the ball and get you have to take a couple extra touches just to make sure you've got it sorted. And also, Stoke went from back to front. Tottenham were forced to go from back to front. Well, one team you don't want to go back to front against is Stoke. They're sitting there waiting for it. I mean, it was always going to be a 0-0 after there was like no goal in the first 25 minutes and the rain kept coming down.
Tottenham are favourites to win this game, 6-5. Let's take a look at the match prices on screen. As you can see, Aston Villa 5-2 and the draw 5-2. Villa have put in some eye-catching performances recently, as we know. But as we were talking earlier in the show, you know, teams, middle-ranking teams, they do find it difficult to stretch sort of unbeaten runs or even runs where they've just had the odd defeat in 7 or 8 into extended runs that go through over the season. And for me, Villa will probably end up mid-table. I don't think they're going to keep knocking over the big guns. How do you see Villa this season?
Over the course, I think under Paul Lambert they're going to be great because they've got an average age of 23 in their squad, and when you've got a squad like that, they're only going to get better with the longer they're on the pitch. So the more games they play, the more confident they're going to become, and the more they're going to have potential to get better and better for like the seasons to come. I look at this game and I think that all 3 results are possible. So then when you've got that, you've got to be looking at the draw as your starting base. And 5-2 the draw, then I think that's where you want to be. If it becomes an individual match-up all over the pitch, then you say Tottenham got better players. But if you've got the likes of Benteke and you've got more play in the Tottenham half, then Villa could pull it up. So I've got to go to draw.
Flash likes to draw. What about first goal scorer? Let's take a look at the prices. Flash mentioning Benteke, the Belgian international, 13-2 to get the first goal. Andreas Weimann, the Austrian, 8-1, and Agbonlahor, who's missed 1 or 2 games because of injury, and 9-1 shot. When it comes to Spurs, Defoe, Dempsey, and Adebayor, you can see 5s, 8s, and 13-2. Adebayor there, the second favourite. Start of the season, of course, it was Defoe that was getting the nod, and Adebayor was out of favour. More recently, the pair have played together. Are they a natural 2, or do you think that Defoe fits in a little bit better when he's got a couple of wide players either side, none of them being Adebayor, obviously?
Yeah, at home I think you can play one up, and it will probably be Adebayor, or maybe even have Defoe in the hole, but you'd only have one up. Away from home, if you're going to play, you play them both, and you definitely play Adebayor because he leads the line so well. But with Jermaine, he scores goals. He's probably if he's not the best, he's the second best British-born goal scorer, natural goal scorer. So you have to have him in and around the box, and then you have to have him in the side. They've got an embarrassment of riches.
Is he in the form of his career at the minute, Jermaine Defoe? Because we've seen him flit between clubs. He's been at Spurs a couple of times, of course, and he went to Portsmouth, and he was at West Ham a good few years ago now, and he's always scored goals wherever he's been. But in terms of his all-round play, do you think we're seeing the best of him once and for all?
I just think that the longer he stays in the team and the more games he plays, the better he gets, of course, because his timing becomes better, he's sharper, he's fit. I mean, he looks after himself brilliantly anyway. But you know, as well as I do, he wants to get it onto his right foot and he wants to pull the trigger, and he doesn't think twice. So for me, he's such an important part for Tottenham to go forward this year. Be
interesting to see whether Spurs do indeed finish in top 4. You're predicting top 4?
Yeah, top 4. Yeah, definitely.
Top 4 only just missed out. Well, they did finish top 4, didn't they, last season, but missed out because of Chelsea's winning the Champions League. Let's move on to Stoke versus Liverpool next at the Britannia. Flash talked about Stoke before. They are so tough to break down. Certain conditions and certain grounds, and certainly at home they are very hard to beat. Liverpool were excellent against Fulham, but Martin Jol suggested after the game that Fulham were terrible and Liverpool were always going to win that game. This is going to be a lot tougher for Brendan Rodgers' side. How do you see the game?
Well, I have to look at the personnel on the actual day, because I felt that the way Liverpool been playing, and with justification really, that they'd been awful. They pass the ball too sideways, they waste too much time in getting the ball forward. Allen comes out, £15 million, Joe Allen comes out, Stevie G gets back on the ball, and they were frighteningly good. I mean, I sat there and watched some of his range of passing, but then what he does, his teammates know what he's going to do. His teammates bomb and getting. They had 5 and 6 men getting in the box on the end of like 40-yard rapier-like balls.
Did Joe Allen slow it down? Is that what we were saying a little bit?
Joe Allen slows it down more than slow, and also he has to share the ball with Gerrard. Why would you do that? Just give it to Steven Gerrard. He's been one of the best Premiership players for the last 10 years. You bring someone in at 15 million who's been a bit too careful. He doesn't create any goals. Steven Gerrard, he not only creates, he scores as well. So I would say that if Alan is in the Liverpool side,
And
I'd want to be Stoke.
But do you think he's going to play? Because he's Brendan
This is
Rodgers.
it.
He's Brendan Rodgers signing.
I know. I mean,
You've got to back up your signings.
yeah,
haven't you?
I wouldn't play him. I would not play him. I would let Liverpool get their head of steam up now, because the difference in their performance for the first 3-4 months of the season compared to what I saw against Fulham. Yes, Fulham were awful, but Liverpool were exceptional. But you can't bet against Stoke neither. I think Liverpool, the best they can hope for is a draw, and I think that Stoke at home are over 2-1. You'd have to stay with Stoke.
Let's take a look at the match prices for this game, because as you can see, Stoke are over 2s, as Flash rightly points out. 23-10 draw, 23-10. Liverpool are 7-5. The bookmakers are finding this one difficult to price up. I think that Alan Gerrard conundrum is interesting, and when the team news comes out, if Alan is missing, I'll be tempted,
Without a doubt,
maybe to back Liverpool here. But if he plays, it could be the other way around.
Well, because it'll get caught, it'll get pressurised, and all he wants to do is go and get the ball off the back four and pass it and keep it and let them be patient. Well, you can't do that against Stoke because they'll be in your face. So it really is. I would say if Alan plays, Stoke. Gerrard plays, lay Stoke.
Half-time, full-time. Let's take a look at the prices. Sorry about this, Joe, certainly. Half-time, full-time look like this. If you think that Liverpool are going to be leading half-time, full-time, as they were last time against Fulham, 3-1. Stoke, half-time, full-time there is 5-1. Draw, 4-1 as well. We know Stoke are tough to break down at home. If you had to pick out a half-time, full-time for us, I mean, this is difficult, isn't it, as those odds suggest?
I think draw Stoke at 13-2 is quite good value, to be honest, because Stoke will make sure that they're in the game as long as possible and maybe force Liverpool to go back to front, like they did Tottenham, and then go and hit them on a break.
We don't want to labour the point here, but if Joe Allen doesn't play and Liverpool win, that's going to see Brendan Rodgers play without Joe Allen for the foreseeable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go right over the top this early.
But I think it's an interesting point, because the game the game against Fulham, we saw Gerrard
and all the other Liverpool players, though. All the other Liverpool players. But what happens is, when you play, and I don't want to go right into one, but when you play side to side, none of your teammates move, because they'd have to be there for you. When Gerrard gets on the ball, they all go, whoo, and you're like, right, here we go. And then you're winning the ball in their danger area. So for me, I don't see Liverpool at their strongest with Alan in the side.
It'd be interesting to see what Brendan Rodgers does, not just for the game at the Britannia, but for the remainder of the season as well. Stevie G certainly back to something like his best in that match against Fulham. That wraps up the Boxing Day previews. We're going to take a look at the lower leagues after the break as we delve into the outright prices and who might be the best bets for promotion when it comes to the Championship, League One and League Two. Don't go away. Welcome back to this festive edition of the Punter. Plenty of fixtures, of course, around the Christmas period. We're going to delve into some of the lower leagues next as we take a look at the outright and promotion odds when it comes to the Championship, League One and League Two. Flash Gordon-Watson is with me in the studio. Flash, we're going to talk Championship first of all. At the start of the campaign, I know you put up the likes of Leicester and Leeds. You're still very much in the vanguard with your selections. Quite happy so far?
Yeah, very happy. I'm more happy now that Leeds have actually picked themselves up, and on the back of actually getting a bit of investment in there. So
that could be crucial, couldn't it?
Oh, it's massive. It is massive, because you just look at the basics and you look at Neil Warnock gets the job done. Leeds fan base, they had a good run in the cup. They're starting to get players back fit, and at Ellen Road, they've beaten all the big boys, and they've gone and slipped up against some of the lesser lights. So I think that after Christmas, we'll see the better of Leeds.
Let's take a look at the outright odds as it stands at the moment. Of course, Cardiff are top of the table. They are top by 3 points from Hull. That's reflected in the outright betting. Cardiff 9-5, Hull 13-2. Crystal Palace, who of course drew last time out 7-1. Leicester beaten by Cardiff in the last game 8-1. Middlesbrough 9s. Leeds 22s could be interesting for the promotional odds, which we'll look at in a second. But when you look at those outrights, are Cardiff worth taking on, do you think?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, because every single year they just fail to deliver for you. They're always up here. Sometimes they're even more clear at the Christmas time. But when it comes to the end of the season, their squad is just not quite right.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the pressure told late last season, we saw that, and you tend to feel that when it does get towards the business end of the season, there are some clubs that just don't seem to manage it. Happens in all sorts of divisions as well. You look at Milton Keynes Dons in League One, they get to playoffs, but at the final hurdle, they all seem to fail, and that's happened with Cardiff recently. And you never really want to back someone too short with half the season to go, do you?
No, and also you don't want to take somebody who goes and gets beaten at home by the bottom of the table side. I mean, the Cardiff fans, they get on their back sometimes, and probably
They
Cardiff
expect a lot, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and it's almost as if it's Cardiff players or their team's fault because they promise so much. And they get their hopes up, and then they fail to deliver. So for me, I think the top two here, I think Cardiff and the Hull, and even
Hull
Palace.
don't seem to score enough goals, do they?
No, well organised. They're like their manager. They'll battle for everything. They'll get the job done. But I'm thinking that the bottom three here, Leicester, Middlesbrough, and Leeds, they're probably the three that you'd want to look at.
What's happened with Leicester over the course of the last year, Flash? Because you've got a bit of an insight there with your pal there.
Yeah. Well, first of all. Sven-Goran Eriksson came in. He spent about £25 million on players that weren't worth the money. Put them on big dough, and Nigel's had to come back in and try and sort it out. And I mean, for them to be sitting in like the top six still now, I think they've only won one of the last three, but then they didn't lose for 10 games before that. The problem I've got with Leicester, and it's nothing to do with the personnel, is the ownership. The ownership, if they do not understand football, they might pull the trigger on someone who's without doubt the best man for the job. Yeah, and that's not me being a friend. That's me just being professional. I'm saying an opinion, saying that he so gets it right.
How are we going to get it right when it comes to the promotional odds, though? We talked about the outrights. Let's take a look at the prices just for the teams to go up. Could be, of course, second. Could be via the playoffs. As you can see here, Cardiff is short, 4-9, as we know. Hull 7-4, Leicester 15-8. But suddenly, you start to look at maybe Palace 5-2. At the moment, they've still got their star man Zaha, haven't they? They might not have him, of course, back end of January. Leeds at 5-1. They're getting closer to those playoff places. If you look at to be promoted, where's your best bets?
I look at that and I think to myself, I'd want to take Cardiff and Hull on. Without a doubt, I'd just want to. So mine would be to take Cardiff and Hull on. You're going to have Leicester a bigger price anyway. I mean, 8-1, quarter the odds, 1-2. You're going to get 2-1.
I mean, they're in the playoff positions already, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're already sitting there. But again, I think you've got to look at Leeds. I mean, if you're looking at 22-1 each way, maybe a quarter the odds, you're going to get more than the 5-1 for promotion. But it's whether they go through via the playoffs. So for me, I'd still want to stick with Leicester and Leeds. Yeah,
Leicester and Leeds. Leeds certainly to me look a little bit of value. Becchio with 15 goals in the Championship already this season. Let's move it on to League One, third tier of English football. We can take a look at the outright odds first of all to go up. Obviously, Sheffield United are top of the table at the moment, and they are the favourites to win the division at 5-2, MK Dons 4-1, Brentford 6-1, Swindon 7s, Bournemouth 8s, and Doncaster 14-1. Flash, you tipped Sheffield United at the start of the season. They went top of the table in their last game. There was lots of postponed matches because of the weather, but they got the job done. They beat Crawley away from home, and they're sitting pretty at the top of the division. Yeah, they are, and there's a lot of people are happy as well because some of the other results have gone wrong yesterday, and people had to actually play. Sheffield United probably wouldn't have been top, and yet they have a top at Christmas market. So a lot of people who thought Sheffield United would be top running away with it have got very, very lucky. I don't want to come away from Sheffield United because Danny Wilson's got a very, very young side there. And a little bit like we said about Aston Villa earlier, this squad have played and got better and better and better. For the first 2 months of the season, when they won 1-0 because they just wanted to stay in games and maybe just have a little bit of extra class late on in games. Now they're taking their games to people and they have got so much confidence. The squad's maybe not big enough, maybe a couple of experienced signings around the end of January just to sort of mould them. But I wouldn't believe anyone Sheffield United, and the dark horses are obviously Bournemouth. Yeah, Bournemouth are interesting. Let's just have a look at the promotional odds because I think this is where you might want to back Bournemouth here because they had plenty of money at the start of the season. It didn't go right at all. Eddie Howe came back in, and from there on in, they have looked like promotional material once again. I mean, they are the dangers, aren't they? I mean, it wasn't so long ago that I think they're around about 33s just for promotion, let alone anything else. But they're on this amazing run at the moment. Well, when Eddie went there, we tipped him up at 25-1 and said, listen, they're just too big a price. You've got to get involved. And they go from strength to strength. Yes, there is still more money there to maybe bring someone else in January. But I look at it and say 5-2 for promotion. They will definitely be odds on in that promotion push. Playoffs, if they don't go in automatically. And I still quite like the 5-6 about Sheffield United going up. It's not bad, is it? 5-6. 5-2 to win it, 5-6 to go up. And that is 1, 2, 3, isn't it?
1-2 and playoff.
It's 1-2 and playoff, yeah. So, I mean, the playoffs, it gives, teams middling at the moment some sort of opportunity. But I think Sheffield United will probably end up being one of the top two sides.
Without a doubt, yeah.
It's as if you want a saver for them to come second. I think you back them 5-6, and you've got that safety net of them.
I'd prefer to be with Sheffield United at 5-6 than I would Cardiff at 4-7.
Let's move it on to League Two, bottom tier of the English pyramid. Gillingham, of course, are top of the table at the moment. They didn't play in their last fixture because it was postponed, but they are top by some distance. And as we can see for the prices, they are the short price favourites to get the job done. They are 6-5 here. Port Vale 6-1, Rotherham 7-1, Southend 12-1, Cheltenham 14s, and Bradford at 16-1. How do you see League Two, Flash?
Well, a lot of people they say that Gillingham are home and hosed, but as long as you've got Martin Allen there, something could go wrong. Whether Martin Allen then gets a bigger job, or whether he has a falling out. But again, I don't think his squad is quite big enough to go ahead and get the job done as easy as he has done. Been brilliant so far. I think Southend are the value at 12s. I think Southend, they've got goals, they've got young boys, again, that are getting better with every game, getting a little bit more confident. And they've got Asen Belonga, obviously on loan from West Ham, who's scoring goals. Yeah,
scoring plenty of goals at the moment. Let's take a look at the promotional odds. These are the prices to be promoted from League Two. Gillingham are 2-7, Port Vale 5-6. The lad Pope keeps knocking them in for Port Vale, isn't he? Rotherham even money, Southend 2-1, Cheltenham 2-1, Bradford 2-1. I just feel about Bradford that these cup runs are going to catch up with them at some stage. Obviously, you're a former Bantam yourself. I mean, what's the feeling up there? I mean, obviously in the semi-final of the Capital One Cup, they've been reinstated to the FA Cup. Is that going to have a detrimental effect on maybe them getting promoted from League Two to League One?
I don't know. I look at them and I think in Narky Wells they've probably got one of the...
they've got a player. Is he going to stay?
No, I don't. Well, I would hope not for his sake. But if they are going to keep him and he goes up with them, that's the only way they're going to keep him. So for me, good players. They proved that against Arsenal. They can go and play, but they've got to do it week in, week out, not just be turned on by the big events. So for me, yeah, Bradford will be there a bit thereabouts. But I look at Southend. Again, I look at Southend and think home and away, they score goals. Home and away, they get victories, and that's what it'll come down to. But I wouldn't rule Bradford out because they have got someone in Narky Wells, and they've got a good few. They've got a few. They've got Hines, who used to be at West Ham as well, and so they've took a few. Isaac McLeod's just gone there, or Aaron McLean, someone who was at Charlton. So they've got a bit of experience to go with the young boys. For me, I'm not quite sure about Gillingham though, so I'll go for Southend.
It's interesting that the two anti-post favourites, Rotherham and Fleetwood, there were two single-figure odds market leaders. They're just off the pace, but they've not dominated like the odds at the start of the season suggested they would. How many times do we see that in the lower leagues?
Well, Rotherham, it was all hype about going to the New York Stadium. They win their home games, but they get beat on the road. Then all of a sudden, they get a few injuries to key personnel. Then they're struggling. They just become an ordinary middle-of-the-table side. So it is much of a muchness, and all I would say is don't get dragged in with who's at the top at the moment, because with this league, it will go right down to the wire.
We need your bet of the festive period. Flash, obviously, there's plenty of Boxing Day fixtures when it comes to those matches in the Premier League. We talked about Chelsea, Norwich. We talked about one or two others as well. There could be one or two good things. Maybe if Steven Gerrard plays and Jarland doesn't, we might fancy Liverpool. What's your best bet?
I like two. I like two home and the bottom two sides. I like Reading to beat Swansea, and I like Queen's Park Rangers to beat West Bromwich Albion. Those
are the two best bets for Flash. Hopefully you will have a successful and profitable festive period. That's all from us on The Punter. We'll see you next time.